Hello and welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Maria Shakil. Palestine has been a festering wound on the Arab psyche for the last 75 years. The longest and the most controversial conflict in the world has taken center stage again. The Israel-Hamas war and the bombing of Gaza for over a week has once again brought the Arab solidarity with the Palestinians to the forefront. There have been protests across the Muslim world against Israel. Just a day ago, US President Joe Biden was snubbed by the leaders of Jordan, Egypt and Palestine who refused to meet him after his visit to Tel Aviv, where he showed solidarity with Israel. The Organization of Islamic Countries, which is a group of 57 Muslim countries, called an emergency meet on Wednesday and called for an end to Israeli occupation of Palestine. Iran and Saudi ministers met to discuss the issue, and Riyadh has put on hold all talks of normalization of ties with Israel. The Abraham Accords appear to have been put on the back burner. On the show tonight, we ask, has the Palestinian cause again united the Muslim world? But first up, Ghazali explains how the people of the Arab nations may be forcing their governments to rethink ties with Israel.
Since this war has broke out between Israel and Hamas, we have also observed widespread protest in the Arab world. People have taken to streets in Lebanon, in Iran, in Iraq, and different other countries in the Arab world to protest against Israel's attack on Gaza Strip. Different Arab countries have also issued statements of condemnation, be it the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia or the United Arab Emirates. They have all condemned Israel's brutal attack on Gaza Strip. Now we'll try to break it down to understand that how Palestine has somewhere galvanized the entire Arab world, and it has got a brief history. For Palestinians and Arabs, the war didn't begin on the morning of October 7 with Hamas's attack on Israel. Rather, it's been ongoing since 1948 when militias expelled Palestinians from their homes and killed tens of thousands in what is called Nakba or catastrophe. Now, Palestinian occupation has also been a festering wound for Arabs. Repeated wars with Israel, be it 1948, 1967, 1973, and loss of land has been a festering wound on the Arab people. Through the 1950s and the 60s, the heydays of Arab nationalism, Palestine was the central Arab cause which catapulted many Arab leaders to power. Now, public support for Palestine has been across the world, and people have come out many a times in the past to support Palestinian cause. But peace with Israel has come at a cost. In 1951, Jordanian king was assassinated, and he was assassinated because he was seen to be somebody who was being soft on Israel. In 1981, Egypt's president Anwar Sadat was assassinated because 3 years earlier in 1978, he has struck a peace deal with intervention of the United States. In 2020, the US President Donald Trump struck a big peace deal between Israel and the Arab world with Abraham Accords, in which UAE, Morocco and Bahrain, they all joined hands with Israel, they signed peace treaties with Israel. But even then, it was told and multiple surveys suggested that all these countries are monarchies and the people were not in support of joining hands with Israel, but that was sidestepped. And today, when Hamas attack over Israel and Israel's retaliation on Gaza Strip has been reported, people have come out showing the fault lines of the entire Abraham Accords, that how these rulers, these kings and the kingdoms ignored public sentiments and joined hands with Israel. Now, after this attack, perhaps the biggest reason is that people have come out, and it has always been seen in the past that how Arab kings or the presidents or the rulers in the Arab world could not afford to ignore the public anger. Now we'll have to see whether this public anger stays or it is just a minor eruption or it continues till the war goes on.
And joining me on the show, Fahim Ahmed is advisory member, Middle East for Democracy. We have Hassan Al-Hassan, former senior analyst on foreign policy, PMO of Bahrain. Isa Amro is a Palestine activist recognized as human rights defender by the United Nations. Felix Friedson is a senior journalist of Israel. We have also Prabhu Dayal, former ambassador to Kuwait. Prabhu Dayal, beginning with you, the spotlight is on Mohammed bin Salman. He was hoping to script history with landmark normalization deal, but is the larger sense now, and particularly after the call with Iran's Ibrahim Raisi, that any talks would need to include Palestinian people in them?
Well, I think the Arab position has been for a long time that the Palestinians have to be included in any talks that are held regarding the future of the nation, of that region. Now, I have served, apart from Kuwait, where I was ambassador, I was also ambassador in Morocco. I've been consul general in Dubai. I served in Egypt. The man on the street always feels strongly for the Palestinian cause. I was in Egypt when President Sadat had signed the Camp David Accord, but there was a perceptible anger amongst the masses, and that showed itself, that manifested itself in his assassination. So I'm sure that the man on the street in Arab countries feels very strongly for the Palestinians who are suffering, but the governments are inclined more towards looking at certain related aspects. Governments are concerned with how to prevent an expansion of the conflict, how to provide relief assistance to the Palestinians, how to stop the bombing of the Gaza Strip by the Israeli forces, and how to stop Hamas from firing rockets into Israel. And above all, how to be able to pressurize Hamas into releasing the Israeli hostages. So governments look at the matters in a more comprehensive manner. The person on the street definitely gets angered by what he sees as the direct suffering of the Palestinians. So these issues are very complex.
Yes.
And I'm sure that Crown Prince Salman is very competent, he's very seasoned, and he'll be able to think through how Saudi policy...
Mr. Al-Hassan, the larger sense certainly is, because of the developments that have happened in the last few days, that for Palestinians and Arabs, the war did not begin on the morning of October 7th with Hamas's attack on Israel. Rather, for them, the war has been ongoing since 1948.
Well, it's very important, obviously, to put things into their context. Otherwise, we end up understanding nothing. Unless we mention this prior history of Israel's long-standing occupation of Palestinian territories and the fact that Gaza has been placed under siege for the past 16 years by Israel. Unless we bring all of that historical context into the spotlight, then really we have a very hard time understanding where this conflict is coming from. And this is obviously not the first time that that Hamas and the Israelis have been to war together. Every single time, Israel's response has been to use more force and to inflict more damage and bring more firepower to the fight. This, unfortunately, hasn't worked out so far. There has been a total absence of any peaceful, negotiated pathway to a viable Palestinian state. And in fact, if we consider the more recent historical context that preceded this conflict, we've seen an uptick in settler violence in the West Bank, an uptick in provocations around and surrounding and within Al-Aqsa Mosque, including attacks on the women's prayer room, which is something that's unprecedented, and an expansion of Israel's illegal settlement construction and annexationist policy in many parts of the occupied West Bank. And so there is a political context, there is a context of illegal occupation that is crucial to understanding where this present conflict is coming from and to essentially underscore the fact that it's not simply occurring in a vacuum.
Okay, but look at the protests that are happening, Felice. Moroccans, Jordanians, Egyptians have all rallied in protests, large and small. And even as their governments have somehow built and maintained varying degrees of diplomatic ties with Israel.
First of all, I want to say that I run an American news agency. So I want to really base this on, you have to look at all the sides, and I'm listening to both of the other gentlemen here speaking, and frankly, there's two sides to every story. Israel did in 2006 relinquish Gaza. The problem with where the people are in Gaza, and this is very important note before I answer your question, is that the Egyptians as well don't want 1 million Palestinians in their territories. I think that there has to be some kind of decision on a very international level of how to handle the situation in Gaza and the people who just want to live and breathe in Gaza. You can't deny that you don't have terrorist organizations that are operating right now in Gaza. The United States has deemed Hamas and Islamic Jihad terrorist organizations. You can't say that, yes, the Palestinian people aren't living in squalor. They are. The problem here, though, of October 7th is that 3,000 terrorists came into the Israeli territories and basically massacred innocent civilians. Then cut to a couple of days later, we end up with a rocket that emerged, a rocket that attacked the Al-Aqri hospital. And everyone is watching what's happening throughout the world.